welcome to this week's test flight. On this week's show we have the F117 Nighthawk. Shh, don't tell anyone. Welcome to the first of our craft, and it's not actually an F117. This is the XF117 demonstrator by Andy441, and it actually represents the Have Blue craft. And I'm going to start it up and then we can talk a bit about it. So, well, it's noisy. So, Have Blue was a small scale test craft. There was actually a couple of them developed by the Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin. To try and demonstrate the technology required for, look at that, for the F117. And yeah, it's a really nice little craft. It was basically to demonstrate the idea that they could put together a craft that would obey certain rules regarding low radar, impact and so forth like that. And it was because of these craft that the US government actually issued the funds, the budget requirements for Lockheed Martin to build the F117. So let's have a look at this. Let's how maneuverable is this. This is it's a lovely little craft actually. Look at that. Obviously, it wasn't the final shape. It was a subscale version. Just like this is, you've got the engine sticking out the back, which would not be great for radar signal actually. We'll talk about that later when we get to the others. We're going to try and bring this in for a landing, but this is a nice little, and this is interestingly I think the only demonstrator that was actually I could find in the community. So it's something that's been sort of overlooked, but it was called Have Blue, and yeah, a lovely little craft. I believe both of them were either destroyed, I'm not sure, somebody could correct me on that, destroyed during flight testing and so forth, but it's a lovely little craft, and there are some pictures out there of it, but not many. And again, it was a subscale version of the F117, just to test that it would work, and so it wasn't fully sort of designed out in the way the 117 was. I'm just going to come in for a little landing there. Look at that, isn't that lovely? Just pop it down. There we go. That's a really nice little craft. I'm not going to play around too much with it because it's the demonstrator, but yeah, it's a really nice little craft. Obviously, it doesn't look massively like the F117. Have Blue did look like the final 117, but it was a bit like this. It was a bit sort of a combination of parts. The concepts of the swept wing angles, the tilted tail, the full wing approach, but lacked some of the stealth tech. So, with that, let's move on to the big boys. Right, welcome to the first of our actual F117s. This is the F117 by Flyingaardvark. Links down below. You can see the distinctive styling and everything that basically makes it what it is. We'll start the engines up, take the brakes off, hope that we don't crash, see if we can take off. Now, or in the grass. Oh, that's not going to end well, is it? Is it going to take off? I don't know. Come on, pull up, pull up, pull up. Oh dear. Yeah. Oh. Well, as we fly over the side there, let's try that again. So this craft is not abiding by any of the rules that it should abide by. It is falling to bits regularly, and yeah. I think a few more struts are required for that one. Here we have something that looks a lot more like an F117. This is the F117A Nighthawk by Servo. You can see actually already the engines are sort of hidden away, but there are intakes that are visible there. That would have been originally was part of the design to sort of limit the radar cross-sectional area to hide the thermal signature. It also meant that the F117 could not use afterburners, and it was actually a subsonic craft. Let's get going. So it has quite a sort of significant sort of design, the F117, and it stands out. It's one of those sort of poster childs that you'd have on the wall. Oddly enough, the flat surfaces are not in order to make it radar have a low radar profile. Well, they are and they aren't. You don't need flat surfaces to make you have a low radar profile. However, at the time of its design, computational design was not brilliant, and so this is hard to fly, but then that's pretty accurate, I suppose. Computational power was not great, and so what actually happened was they instead of using curved surfaces, they actually used flat surfaces for doing calculations, and that's why it has all these flat surfaces, because they couldn't actually compute properly the radar interactions and so forth that would happen if it had curved surfaces. Later craft like the B-2 bomber, it's got curved surfaces, but yet it's stealth. Okay, so there was for a while there was a common misconception that stealth craft had to have flat surfaces. This is now interesting. This is difficult to fly. I've put SAS on, but it's difficult to fly. The real craft was the same. It was a very difficult craft to fly. It was actually unstable in all three axes and had to be fly-by-wire. You had to have a computer on it at all times to fly it. One RAF pilot who saw pictures of it for the first time actually commented that he couldn't believe that something like it would ever fly because of its shape. It does sort of, go against all sort of rules. And you have to remember that it was actually primarily designed for its low radar radar signature. Consideration of how it was going to fly was secondary. So it was how much can we actually cover the radar with this. And that's why it's got this really sort of unique look to it that craft nowadays just don't have, because as they've developed technology, computer technology, they just look more like planes. We're going to bring this in for a landing. It's actually quite a difficult craft to fly. The stealth, the F-117 was originally, was called the stealth fighter, but it wasn't a stealth fighter. It was an air-to-ground craft. It was a bomber, a single-seater bomber. It just looked unlike anything anybody had ever seen, and as such, it basically got nicknamed the stealth fighter. It was in fact the stealth bomber. Oh, we're coming in we've lost all control. Oh dear. Yeah, well, that's the nose gone on that one. Note to self, its electricity dies quite quickly. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting explosion. So, that is the F-117A Nighthawk from Servo. It's a beautiful looking craft, even when you've taken half the nose off. Distinctively looks just like the F-117 Nighthawk. It's beautiful. Let's get on with another one. Now with something a little different, it's we can see our Kerbal, we can see our pilot. This is the stock F117 Mark 1 by Spinto-Aeronautics, links down below. So let's get this one going. Ooh, loud engines. And let's just take it off, let's get it going. Looks okay, nice. Little less appearance of F117 than our previous craft, but it still looks very good. It's got the distinctive wing structure. This angle, in fact, had to be greater than 50 degrees in order to cause the radar to bounce off. That's why it's got this quite noted sweep on its wings. A lot of the angles on here were dictated by maths as opposed to by making a good flying plane, and so that's why it is how it looks. Even to the point of the paint that was used on it was specific. Yeah, let's have a look at this. Obviously, it became famous in the sort of 90s, and its first flight, however, its first, I think, active flight was in 81. Although it was flying before that in its demonstrator role and so forth. It became synonymous in my mind with the conflicts in the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, or whatever you want to call it. I think the Americans call it the Persian Gulf, so the Arabs called it the Arabian Gulf, and having lived and worked in the Middle East, I can tell you now they do definitely call it the Arabian Gulf, and if you call it the Persian Gulf they get annoyed, but the Americans like to call it the Persian Gulf. This is a really nice craft. This is actually very manoeuvrable, probably more manoeuvrable than it should be, although interestingly it is slowing down very quickly when the engine's cut. So let's see if we can just turn. It's exceedingly manoeuvrable actually. This uh-oh, it's dying. Let's get some power on. I think the aerodynamics of this one have actually really messed it quite interestingly up, so that when you slow down, come on, get down. When you slow down, you don't have thrust on it. It will actually go backwards, which is quite interesting actually. So let's try and just pull our engine down to about 50%. We're going to try and land it with power. Normally I glide craft in, but let's have a go. Yeah, this is not obeying normal rules at all. It seems to be wanting to go backwards. This is an interesting one to fly. It takes off nicely and flies really interestingly, but when you start to turn it away from its forward vector, it gets very interesting. So let's cut the power now because we're definitely coming down. Let's pull up a little bit. Here we go. Pull up a bit more. Pull up a bit more. Let's see how close the ground actually is. Oh, we're very close. We're going to just belly flop down, aren't we? Boop. It's got a lot of surfaces, I'd imagine, to it. A lot of wing pieces in amongst there, and it makes it just flop around really nicely at a really slow speed. So if you want something you can't really destroy, this is probably the craft, although it does act a little weird. So that is the stock F117 Mark 1 by Spinto-Aeronautics. I quite like it. It's very odd having the Kerbal sat there, though. I don't know if I like that aspect of it. I think I preferred the servo craft just because it was covered. You can see lovely detail on the inlets there, and the outlets again around the back of the engine covered over just like the real thing, so they couldn't get radar signal. So let's move on to another one. Right, here we have a craft that wants to be an F117, but I'm not entirely sure it is. So this is the F117 by Space Train. Let's get it going, see how it goes. I'm assuming this will probably fly a lot better. I think the ability to fly has been taken into account with this one. Yeah, look at that. Takes off really slow speed. Get the gears up. It will be interesting to see how fast this goes, actually, because the original, the real-life F117 could not go supersonic. It was limited to subsonic flight, very much so because of its design, well, its shape, but also because of its engines. Its engines couldn't use afterburners. They had to stay sort of quite calm, quite low temperature, because, of course, its whole aim was to be stealthy. It was the stealth bomber, the stealth fighter. This, I do not feel, is that stealthy. But it's a nice homage to the shape, in particular the wing shape, I think is right. The tail possibly, but the body not quite. You can see it's got curves on it. Later stealth craft have curves, but not the 117. Right, let's see just how maneuverable it is, though, because of course the F117 was not a fighter. It was not a highly maneuverable craft. No matter what people wish to think about it being the stealth fighter, it was a bomber. It was designed to go in reasonably calmly, undetected. It did not need to avoid things because the idea was that you couldn't see it. You couldn't pick it up on radar. You couldn't see what was going on. It was taken out on occasion by ground-to-air missiles and so forth. Each time that happened, it was very much a sort of, it was broadcast, and people were agog or a goo with it, because it was seen as the unfindable craft. You know, the general population of America didn't even know about it until it was decided to be released. This is a really nice, just plain craft. Actually, the nose is not particularly great design. I mean, the craft is not aiming to be a replica of the 117, the F117. But it's nice. It's a little homage. I quite like it, actually. I think of all of them, it's probably the one I would probably want to fly just for a bit of fun. The others are to look at beautifully, but I think this is the one that you'd end up flying daily if you had to fly one. Let's just see. Look at that landing, easy. Some brakes on, so when I touch down, we actually stop. Whoop, whoop, bit of instability, bit of instability, bit of instability, bit of instability. You'll notice I haven't actually put the SAS on this craft yet. Put it on now, which is quite amazing, actually. I flew that entire thing without SAS on and didn't even realize it. So I think, yeah, the F-17 from Space Train 1, although it's not got the best looks, you know what? It's the one you'd want to fly if you had to. So let's move on to our last one now. Something tiny little bit different. Here is our final entrant into the world of the F117 Nighthawk. This is the K117 Whitehawk. I quite like the play on words there. And you can see that it's very much a Kerbalized version of the craft. Start the engines up. It's very much Kerbalized. It's got some tail fins there that are at an angle, which is okay. They've got the sort of shape of the craft. I don't think the wing angle is particularly accurate. I think it's a bit off, but we'll leave that. It's very much a Kerbalized version. We're getting a bit of speed up. It's taking a while. Let's see if we actually run out of runway or I fall off the edge of the runway while we take off. And this is actually probably more accurate, the speed of the actual the Nighthawk, because it would have taken time to get up to speed. The others all took off very quickly. Let's see, can we pull up? There we go. Okay, don't have any SAS on just yet. Get the gears away. And there we have, that's a lovely little profile actually. They've incorporated the cockpit into the actual front there, but they've done it in a really nice way with the side panels. We're going down, let's pull up a bit. So the F117's main sort of role would have been bombing, and the idea was that it would fly very high at a decent speed with a nice low radar signature, so people thought it was birds or pigeons. However, the issue is you fly too high and you're not really a bird, are you? You're obviously going to stand out. However, the higher you are, it's harder to detect on radar, so it was a bit of a balance. When it was first deployed, it was almost undetectable because people didn't really know what they were looking for. We're going to put a bit of SAS on this. Yeah, this craft has got that natural sort of instability of the Nighthawk, and it's got the difficulty of turning. This actually feels like probably the Nighthawk would be, although maybe a little bit more stable, because it is slow to turn. It's very unkerbalized. In fact, it's very easy in Kerbal to just stick a lot of control planes on there and just fire things around, but this is slow, and I wouldn't say laborious, but it's thoughtful. It feels as though it's thinking about what's going on. Its engines at the back there are not hidden away in the way that I probably would like to be representative of it, but it's okay. It's got its inlets on the side there, maybe not quite great, could maybe hide those a little bit in a different way, but yeah, it's a nice little craft. It flies slowly. I could imagine just having it'd be really cool if there was some bomb bays in there. One thing I noticed is there's no sort of openable bomb bay doors in any of these craft that I've seen, and that would have been quite cool, I think. We're going to land really easily actually. Yeah, that was a really easy landing. So yeah, the F117 whoa. That was an ending and a half, wasn't it? Well done. So obviously we've got a bit of inconsistency in wheel brakes there. Yeah, the F117 Nighthawk, we've got a few examples down below in the description for you to look at, but it's definitely worth having a look at these. They are interesting little craft, and if you haven't tried flying one before, give them a go. At least try and fly a couple of these, because they do fly very differently, and then just have a look up about what the actual real life craft was like, and you will see just how Kerbal can distort, I think. Anyway, from me, until next time, have a great one.